It is the 10th day of July 2013. Many thanks for joining us on KTN Prime. I'm Linda Ogutu. Let's take a look at the highlights tonight.
What is now remaining is the mode of payment of responsibility allowance.
It's a deal. TSC and KUPPET agree on allowances, but NAT remains defiant. Down but not out, KC takes the battle for Makueni Senate to the High Court.
Killing 11 elephants, in my view, is an inside job.
Who is to blame? The truth behind poaching in Kenya? And over half of Kenya's banking population frustrated as Equity Bank's core systems fail. Many thanks for joining us. Now, the Teachers Service Commission today brokered a deal with the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, that is KUPPET, that will see the government pay an extra 11.5 billion shillings in commuter allowances to all teachers. However, the deal was dismissed by the rival Kenya National Union of Teachers, who termed it as inferior. And as Patrick Omimo reports, the deal is not good enough to tempt NAT into calling off their strike just yet.
After 5 days of negotiations between TSC and KUPPET, the union leadership finally accepted the counter offer from the government. Under the KUPPET-TSC deal, commuter allowance for the lowest paid teacher will rise from 1,001 shillings to 4,000 shillings, while that of the highest paid teacher will be raised from 4,410 shillings to 16,000 shillings. This will see the TSC bill for commuter allowance for teachers rise from the current 5.3 billion shillings to 16.8 billion shillings. It was also agreed that responsibility allowance for teachers in job group K and below be increased by 100%. These include head teachers, deputies and senior teachers, and will cost the government a total of 600 million shillings from the current 300 million shillings. However, discussions on the item were not conclusive.
What is now remaining is the mode of payment of responsibility allowance.
The deal has also offered to increase special schools allowance at a flat rate of 10,000 shillings for every teacher in special needs schools and units. Teachers who are visually impaired will each receive a flat rate of 50,000 shillings from the current 7,785. The allowances will enable visually impaired teachers employ readers.
House allowance for teachers were harmonized with those of civil servants through a circular from the from DPM in the year 2001.
Away from the boardroom, the Teachers Service Commission has reinstated the contempt of court charges against KNUT officials after teachers defied orders to call off the strike that has entered the third week. TSC wants KNUT Chairman Wilson Sosion and its Secretary General charged with contempt of court, besides threatening to auction KNUT property to pay up court fees. The court action came as teachers continued with their street protests, agitating for the restatement of Legal Notice 534 of 1997. Patrick Omimo, KTN.
Kenya Power's days as a monopoly in electricity supply are numbered as members of parliament today set in motion plans to liberalize the sector. The MPs want the government to open up power distribution in the country to other players to make it more competitive. And as KTN's Wilkie Sanyabo reports, the motion tabled by Marakwet East, a member of parliament, would enhance efficiency in power supply in the country and mitigate losses owing to power outages.
One by one, members of parliament weighed in on a motion sponsored by Marakwet East Member of Parliament David Bowen, proposing, among other things, that the government liberalize the distribution of power in the country.
It's the high time that KPLC came out of the woods and approached issues in a systematic and scientific manner.
I think Kenya Power has not learned what happened to Telecom Kenya. Because the days that Telecom Kenya was a monopoly in this country, the services were very poor.
Kenya Power has enjoyed a monopoly that has spanned 50 years. And in this Jubilee year, members of parliament now proposing to open up the market to other players. This a welcome development for households across the country, as well as for the Kenya Association of Manufacturers.
We consume about 65% of the total power that is manufactured in this country, yet we pay 75% of the bills. Cost of electricity is 30% of our input.
In the motion, Bowen noted that Kenya, as East Africa's largest economy, remains a minor electricity generator. He also pointed out that Kenya Power appears to be grossly inefficient in its operations, as evidenced by the fact that 85% of the population is unconnected. Further, he noted that power outages and surges have become common occurrences and that Kenya Power has portrayed a lackluster approach to handling customer complaints, which leaves customers disadvantaged due to a lack of alternatives in electricity providers. In Kenya, a unit of power costs 18 US cents or about 20 Kenya shillings against 6 cents in South Africa and 4 US cents in Egypt and Ethiopia. The liberalisation of power distribution then seen as a way to lower the costs and lure investors. The MPs also want Kenya Power to compensate those who have incurred losses through fires, power outages and power surges. Parliament has now set the wheels in motion by approving the motion, paving the way for the introduction of a bill to liberalise power distribution. Wilkison Apwa, KTN Prime.
I'm sure lots of people would like to give their opinion on that story. That's why it's part of our big question tonight. And we're asking you, do you think Kenya Power's monopoly should come to an end? Do you think Kenya Power's monopoly should come to an end? Send a yes or no response, of course, with a brief comment to the number 8040. You can tweet us at KTN Kenya or at Linda Ogutu, and we will sample your opinions during this bulletin. Now, let's move on. And 4 suspects were today lynched in Muhoroni constituency after a cattle rustling incident last night in which 10 animals were lost in the Koru neighborhood. Tension is high at the Rift Valley Nyanza border as local residents continue their search for the perpetrators. KTN's Fredo Mulo has the details.
Residents of Muhoroni today took the law into their own hands following weeks of frustration over security agents' inability to quell the rising cases of insecurity and livestock thefts. Rustling incidents in the nearby Koru plantations triggered the lynching of the 3 whose bodies the police took to Kisumu's Nyanza Provincial General Hospital.
The DO manning the division has got no means of moving. If there is a problem in Fatana or Koro, he can't move. The manpower manning Moroni town post are very few, and yet the population is very high.
The suspects who are accused of petty crimes are also said to be the local accomplices of cattle rustlers who descend from the surrounding Nandi Hills into the Chemelil and Muhoroni countryside in search of livestock.
Ni wezi ndio sababu tuliwaua. Wanatufungia, wametufungia njia yote, lakini haina shida. Na hivyo tu imefanyikana, lakini wameuliwa, lakini wenye bado wako tutawaua.
Speaking off the record, police expressed frustration with the courts that have repeatedly released petty offenders as well as amnesties that bring convicts back into society after short prison stints. From Kisumu County, I am Fredo Mulo.
Right, Cabinet Secretary Jacob Kaimenyi maintains that laptops for the Standard 1 pupils are expected in the country towards the end of this year. However, his recent proposal to purchase tablets instead of laptops has triggered a new debate on which gadget would be best suited to introduce to the young ones in the country. Sophia Onuna reports on the laptops versus tablet debate.
One of the promises on the Jubilee Manifesto that has continued to elicit mixed reactions is the one to supply Standard 1 pupils with free laptops. While the move has been welcomed by some quarters, saying it is a step in the right direction, it has also been criticized in equal measure. But it is the new proposal by the Education Cabinet Secretary to purchase tablets, arguing that projections indicate laptops could be obsolete in the next 5 years, that has critics wondering whether enough thought has been put into the multi-million project. A project that is set to roll out next year, with its first phase benefiting at least 6,000 schools countrywide. But what exactly are the pros and cons of the tablets vis-a-vis laptops?
I'll still go for the tablet, especially for the simple reasons that I've mentioned. One, the usability is a little bit more exciting. it's more appealing to the children. And I also said about the size, it's less bulky for the children, and also for the looking at the possibility of damage, because they're little children. So if they drop it, it has less movable parts to scatter around.
I think both products address different areas, but it's really dependent on what is the solution, what is the requirement, as I said before, what is the type of ecosystem that wants to be, and I think you're going to have a different solution for a teacher, for a grade 2, for a grade 10, and it's really going to depend on what you require out of that tool in order to make those students or educators more efficient in what they want to do.
Speaking when he appeared before the Parliamentary Committee on Education, Science and Technology Tuesday to brief MPs on the laptop program, Kaimeni said what Kenyans need to do is to move in tandem with technology to avoid the country being a dumping ground for obsolete goods. The Education Cabinet Secretary also said we have established that young children prefer the touchscreen gadgets than the use of a mouse.
The touch technology is what is prevalent in the market, and it will prevail over the laptops. So I would rather we start off with the touch technology now, then start off with laptops and then move over to tablets.
In clarifying his earlier statement, Professor Kaimeni today maintained that the first batch of laptops will be delivered in November and December this year as planned, adding that the tablets option is one they will be exploring as the project will be implemented in phases. Sophia Wanuna, KTN.
Sophia Wanuna, they are looking at the debate between the tablets and the laptop project. Of course, that was one of the campaign promises that were made by the Jubilee team as they looked to get into the government. Now today, Ipsos Synovate has released a report, and in that report, they looked at the aspirations of Kenyans under the Jubilee government, and they focused on the promises that were made by Jubilee team that lots of Kenyans still remember. And of course, top on that list that a lot of Kenyans seem to remember is education, healthcare, youth empowerment, and security. These four areas are the areas that lots of Kenyans seem to remember that the Jubilee government made promises, and they expect that the Jubilee government will ensure that those promises are met. 29% of Kenyans believe that the laptop project will come to fruition. 53% believe that the healthcare system will be put in place. 34% believe that youth empowerment will get better in the country with time. 31% believe that job creation will be an aspect that will be focused on by the Jubilee government. Now, Ipsos also looked at the confidence levels for public institutions and, of course, officials, and they focused as well on the President of the Republic, that is Uhuru Kenyatta. 51% of Kenyans have lots of confidence in Uhuru Kenyatta. 48% have confidence in William Ruto. This is the same percentage that Kenyans have in religious leaders, and 46% have confidence in the media in the country. Now, Ipsos went ahead and looked at the problems that are facing Kenyans. Let's see if that, yes, there it is. They looked at the problems that are facing Kenyans under the Jubilee government 100 days after this team was sworn into office. High cost of living is an issue that is affecting 54% of Kenyans. Unemployment affects 21%. Crime and insecurity affects 7%, and poor leadership affects about 4% of Kenyans. These are the issues that a lot of Kenyans underlined as the issues they would like to see the Jubilee government addressing even as they moved on. Ipsos Synovate as well looked at economic conditions in the country. Of course, this coming in the backdrop of the debate on whether or not people should be taxed more. 49% of Kenyans say the economic conditions in the country has worsened. 34% say this economic condition has stayed the same. 16% say there has been an improvement. They're not really giving us an indication of just how much of an improvement this has been, but this is an indication of the economic scenario of Kenyans under the Jubilee government now. Ipsos Synovate as well looked at the issue of the International Criminal Court. Of course, as you'll recall, President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto are facing charges at that court. And Ipsos Synovate looked at what Kenyans currently think about the ICC and the leaders as well. 39% want the cases to remain at The Hague. This is a debate that has been going on for quite some time now. 32% say the cases should be dealt with within Kenya or in the region. That is another debate that has been going on, and 29% say these cases should be dismissed. This is the findings that Ipsos Sinovet got today as they looked at the issues that are affecting the country and the issues, of course, that are affecting the people under the Jubilee government of just under 100 days after Uhuru Kenyatta ascended into power. Now, let's move on to the Makueni senatorial race. And CORD's candidate for the Makueni Senate seat, Kathy Kilonzo, and her Wiper party have moved to the High Court to stop the Makueni by-election as she fights to get herself back in the race. Kathy is challenging the IEBC Dispute Tribunal's ruling and wants the IEBC stopped from proceeding with all election preparations until the case is heard and determined. And as KTN Samugina reports, TNA have distanced themselves from Kathy's woes, demanding an apology over Kalonzo's remarks that suggested their involvement. Take a look.
She could be down but not out. Kathy Kilonzo has countered the IEBC Tribunal's decision to lock her out of the Makueni Senate race on a Wiper ticket. Kathy's counsel, Julie Soweto, and Wiper party lawyers filed a suit against IEBC to stop the Makueni by-election until her case is heard and determined. The city lawyer fighting her candidature revocation and warding off claims that she is an unregistered voter. In the case filed before Justice Isaac Lenaola, Kathy wants IEBC compelled to suspend the official campaign period and any preparations for the Makueni by-elections, including printing and publishing of electoral materials. Kathy maintains she is a registered voter in Langata constituency of Nairobi, despite the ruling. The tribunal maintained that Kathy's voter registration acknowledgement slip is a stolen IEBC property and the matter has been referred to the Criminal Investigation Department. Kathy states nullification of her candidature infringed on her constitutional rights, claiming she was denied the right to fair hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal, and that she was already presumed guilty contrary to the rule of natural justice of innocent until proven guilty. Away from the courts, Jubilee Alliance senators slammed Wiper party leader and former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka for claiming TNA was involved in deleting Kathy's name from the voters' register and are now demanding a formal apology.
This clearly shows that TNA is IEBC and IEBC is TNA. TNA must have tampered with the voter register, hence deleting Kathy's name.
It is the CORD coalition who owes the country an explanation of how documents, security documents of a sensitive nature, such as IEBC electoral materials, were stolen from the IEBC.
The Jubilee senators instead claim CORD bears the burden of proof over Kathy's alleged fraudulent voter slip.
Now we know who steals elections. It has come out in black and white, and they do not want even to accept when they lose.
Kathy Kilonzo became a victim of intimidation, harassment, coercion from within their own coalition in a desperate move to ensure that the CORD coalition win the Makueni elections.
Kathy's case begins Thursday. Already, IEBC has gazetted 4 candidates for the Makueni by-election. That is generating a lot of heat on the ground. As witnessed early today when a woman was roughed up by Kathy supporters for discrediting her eligibility. As Jubilee's candidate Philip Kaloki was booed in Salama. Samugina, KTN, Nairobi.
Weeks of the ivory trade and 6 months after 12 elephants were killed at the Savo East National Park, the trail on suspected poachers has gone cold. Investigations are yet to yield any concrete findings on who was behind the country's worst single poaching incident. Security experts are now pointing an accusing finger at the wildlife watchdog KWS over the poaching incident. And as KTN's Rita Tinina reports, they're not ruling out the possibility that some rangers may be abetting poaching.
The recovery of at least 7 tons of ivory at the port of Mombasa in the last 6 months may have turned the spotlight on the country as a transit point for the illegal trade in ivory. But that is just half the story. In the Kenyan wild, elephants continue to face increased threats from poachers. Since the beginning of the year, the country has lost 162 elephants to poachers. But what conservationists and authorities alike are still trying to figure out is what was reported as the killing of 12 elephants in the vast Tsavo East National Park in January.
And we are looking at loopholes that could have led to that kind of thing occurring.
But some say the Kenya Wildlife Service is being economical with the truth about the country's worst single poaching incident in close to 2 decades.
Killing 11 elephants, in my view, is an inside job.
KWS has already interdicted 32 staff members in connection with the poaching, but has failed to answer the question of just how 12 elephants could be killed in a single incident.
Using the AK-47, which is the ordinary criminal weapon in this country, it will be very difficult to kill 12 elephants together. And two, they are not lined up.
It's not a very difficult thing for armed people to bring down a family.
According to security consultant Francis Maina, the massacre of the elephants was a well-coordinated affair with possible collusion of park rangers.
These animals were killed by somebody on chopper through medication. They were sedated to death.
Is he a conspiracy theorist? He argues that to remove the tusks of 12 dead elephants would be a huge task for small-time poachers.
Because you see, it's not moving. To turn it around, you need like a winch or a crane or a Land Cruiser to turn it around.
Transporting the 24 tusks out of the vast park would pose another challenge for anyone without a vehicle or aerial transport. KWS does not rule out that the Tsavo elephant massacre could have been an inside job, but has a warning to those who may be holding brief for poachers in the parks.
We don't forgive because we have a duty of ensuring that we conserve our heritage.
The African elephant remains an iconic symbol of successful wildlife conservation, but recent developments in the country, including the seizure of large amounts of ivory, are pointing to worrying new trends. KWS says sentences imposed on poachers are one of the major drawbacks in the fight against poaching.
A person is found to be having ivory, and you go to court and you are fined maybe 2,000 to 5,000 shillings.
The elephant, one of Kenya's wildlife treasures, remains a prime target for poachers. KWS is hoping that the new wildlife bill, which proposes custodial sentences and stiffer penalties, will do the trick. But for now, the country's elephant population is not out of the woods yet. Drita Tinina, KTN.
So, members of parliament want the government to open up power distribution in the country to other players to make it more competitive. That's why that's the subject of our big question tonight. And we're asking you, do you think Kenya Power's monopoly should come to an end? Send us your yes or no answer, of course, with a brief comment. We will sample some of those during this bulletin. You're watching KTN Prime. Thank you so much for staying with us. We are taking a short break. Here's what's coming up.
Ahead on KTN Business Today, Equity Bank IT servers are up and running after 7 days of system failure. Join me, Joy Doreen Bira, on this edition of KTN Business Today.
You're watching KTN Prime. Welcome back. Just before we took the break, of course, we looked at our big question tonight, and we asked you if you think Kenya Power and Lighting Company monopoly should come to an end. Let's see what some of you are saying. Joseph Kamau says, in fact, the monopoly of KPLC should have ended like yesterday if at all these countries to realize Vision 2030. Livingstone Were says, Kenya Power monopoly must end. It has been enjoyed for many years and this leads to laxity. We want substitute. Kevin says, for Kenyans to get better services, then we must end Kenya Power monopoly. Those those are your opinions on our big question. Keep sending them in. We'll keep sampling them just before we end this bulletin. Now, let's take you all the way to the coast. And a financial crisis is looming within the county government in Mombasa as its debt portfolio spirals out of control. It has emerged that several prime properties owned by the defunct municipal council have now been repossessed by banks and debt collectors following its failure to service its debts. The county government is struggling with debts of over 3 billion shillings that have several operations paralyzed in the past few months. Najma Ismail has details of this story.
Some of the properties that have been repossessed include 300 flats that are in a 7-acre piece of land at Changamwe along Jomo Kenyatta area. Other institutions have also threatened to repossess property in areas like Buxton, Likoni, Chuda and Khadija.
Very prime properties like Changamwe Phase 5 has already been lost. This was due to the same operation. Makande has gone, Jomo Kenyatta.
On his part, Mombasa Governor Hassan Joho has blamed the national government, saying it's not supporting devolution, thus making the debt crisis in his county unbearable. Early this month, county government workers took to the streets to protest unpaid salary arrears.
The current wage bill has to go through a vetting process and an audit so that we know whether it is the true picture on the ground. Our initial observation have shown us that in 2 departments, we got close to 140 people who don't exist there but are in the payroll.
This crisis in Mombasa has largely been blamed on corruption in the now defunct municipal council, which was said to be putting people living in the Middle East on the council's payroll, paying ghost workers, and also overpaying cleaners on a salary of between 40,000 to 100,000 shillings, money which was borrowed from banks. The Kenya Revenue Authority is also demanding 400 million shillings in tax arrears. Najma Ismail, KTN Prime.
You're watching KTN Prime. Let's bring you some breaking news again, only this time it's not so very good news. It's about road carnage and 18 people have been killed in a road accident. We understand that has happened in Bobasi area, Kisii County, that is along Kisii-Kilgoris Road. According to the information that we're getting at the moment is that the accident happened after Rioma Mixed Secondary School bus rolled severally. The information is scanty. We're trying to get more information on this. As soon as we get it, of course, we will let you know. Once again, 18 people have been killed in a road accident in Bombasi area, that is in Kisii County along the Kisii-Kilgoris Road. What we do know at the moment is that the accident happened after Rioma Mixed Secondary School bus rolled severally. We're keeping an eye on that story for you. Thank you for keeping it KTN. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back.
It's time for business. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Over 8 million Equity Bank customers have over the past week endured frustrations in accessing their hard-earned cash following systems failure by the bank. While admitting the failure, the bank, however, said that the systems were up and running. Adelaide Chingole brings us up to speed.
Automated teller machines are a banking customer's best friend, dispensing cash if and when need be. But when the systems failed at Equity Bank, more than half of Kenya's banked population was a frustrated lot.
We cannot deposit, we cannot transact anything, So businesses have been affected, and I think there's going to be a large exodus of customers from Equity.
You walk around town like 4 ATMs, then you give up. You have to use, if you have a Visa card, you have to use a Visa card, which is more expensive.
According to Equity, the problem emanated from an upgrade of its new core banking system, but the changeover was not managed effectively, resulting in a total system failure after the servers crashed.
We were told that they were doing system upgrade, but we wonder why they are doing the upgrade at the end of the month.
The result has been chaotic banking halls.
It's very bad. Like yesterday, I was sent to bank, the money is here. I didn't do it. I waited up to today.
IT experts contend that the 2-week lag following the perceived crashing of the server is far too long, given that the accepted period for disaster recovery of IT systems is 24 hours.
They definitely have a disaster recovery, but the test is what is missing here. You need to do scheduled and continuous tests to make sure that in case of any downtime of the servers or your system, you have continuity.
Equity's core banking system was part of a 695 million shilling business transformation project that began in 2005, seeking to revamp the bank's hardware, including the installation of a state-of-the-art data center and an enhanced ATM network. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business Today.
Treasury and the government of Japan have signed 2 exchange notes for the augmentation of water supply systems in Narok Town and rural water supply in Baringo County, amounting to 1.14 billion shillings and 901 million shillings respectively. Now, the signing is expected to facilitate the construction of water supply in Narok County, which will involve the construction of facilities that will serve approximately 50,000 people. In Baringo County, the project will involve drilling of 90 boreholes that will serve approximately 60,000 people, with 43 of the boreholes expected to be powered by solar in a bid to reduce management costs as well as greenhouse gases. And the government has also embarked on an ambitious project that seeks to create a major tourism, environmental and cultural heritage development in northern Kenya. The project aims at transforming the Lake Turkana Basin into a veritable Garden of Eden. The project is premised on the historical fact that Kenya, and particularly the Lake Turkana region, is known as the cradle of humankind. Deputy President William Ruto, who led a government delegation to visit the prehistoric sites in Lodwar and Ileret in Marsabit County, says the project will lead to the development of a world-class heritage that celebrates the history of evolution, building on the important finds in the region. The team was hosted at the site by renowned archaeologist Dr. Richard Leakey. And Kenya continues to play host to a number of multinationals seeking a piece of the growing African consumer market. The latest of such entrants is technology firm Lenovo, which says it is carrying out feasibility studies in Kenya on its plans to set up a computer assembly plant. Lenovo President Gianfranco Lanci spoke to KTN on these plans.
With the economy that started to develop in a very nice way, at least in some country, this is one of the reasons, I think, starting from a couple of years ago, we start investing in some countries in Africa. And Kenya is one of the countries where we have been investing a couple of years ago. Now we have a subsidiary here.
We have the hub in Kenya, and we're engaging with the other East Africa countries. So from here, we're engaging with Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Rwanda. Having said that, we have structures built in each of those countries.
And finally, the National Treasury has announced radical reforms in the financial sector with a view of ensuring stability and competitiveness of the local financial institutions. The latest string of reforms seek to, among other things, lower the cost of financial services to customers and enhance security for the depositors through stable and strong institutions. Part of the key reforms include the promotion of competition and consolidation in the banking sector in order to avoid domination of the market by one or two players. Speaking during the opening ceremony of the Financial Services Conference and Exhibition, Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury Henry Rotich also announced plans to establish policy frameworks for pensions, insurance and SACCOs. All the developments are part of the facilitation in the development of the Nairobi International Financial Center, which is a flagship of Vision 2030. Now let's wind up by taking a look at the money market, see how the Kenya shilling performed today and the Nairobi Stock Exchange. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Good evening.
in association with Guinness. He believes a man's name finds its meaning not in what he says, but in what he does. A name that is made of more.
All right, my name is Nicholas Mudimba and welcome to KTN Sports Today. I handed Uganda a humiliating 52-11 defeat in the semi-final of the Confederation of African Rugby Class A1 in Madagascar this afternoon. Kenya will on play on Sunday Zimbabwe in the final. Zimbabwe beat host Madagascar 35-18. Kenya's victory over Uganda was the biggest in 16 years and confirmed the country's superiority over her neighbors, whom they defeated in the Elgon Cup a fortnight ago. The victory also ensured Kenya maintain her Division A1 status, which puts the country in contention for place in the 2015 Rugby World Cup. Scrum half Edwin Achayo was instrumental in the win, but he also joined by Kenya Sevens captain Andrew Omondi in giving Kenya 10 points through the tries. Team captain Wilson Kopondo touched down once alongside Oliver Mangeni, Brian Nyikuli and Stephen Kuto. Kenny Andola kicked over 2 conversions with Fabian Orlando adding a third. Isaac Kadimu added more points from 2 penalties. The final against Zimbabwe is scheduled to be played on Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Moving on now, 43 athletes were today morning taken through doping procedures by AK officials in the presence of IAAF specialists. The exercise is mandatory, especially ahead of the national trials in the World Youth Athletics Championships next month.
The exercise where athletes, mostly those expected to take part in long-distance races during the national trials with the possibility of representing the country in Moscow, Russia, is not a unique one. A section of Kenyan athletes have in the recent past been accused of using enhancing drugs. But Wednesday's exercise, where samples were taken from 43 athletes at Riyadh House, was just a routine one.
IF approached us through the medical commission of the IF. They asked us to get these athletes that they had already selected themselves to come here for what we call blood testing.
According to Athletics Kenya, the blood samples obtained from the athletes will be compared with those samples taken in 2012 before the Olympic Games. The World Championships is often considered the pinnacle competition of the IAAF World Athletics Series, and the athletics heads don't want to take chances as they are fully aware that there could be some bad elements amongst the clean athletes.
When we go to Moscow, for example, and if one of the athletes that you have selected, if he wins, we don't want to hear that he won because of ABCD. He won clearly and fairly. So the exercise going on here is the blood test. We have an official that has come from the IF headquarters, from the doping department. He's here with them. And then we have our local DCOs.
Those called upon for doping form 60% of the number of elite athletes that will take part in the national trials. Victor Ugale, KTN Sports.
And always that's a way forward. Remember, tomorrow Harambee Stars will be meeting Botswana in the Kosafa Cup, and if we win or draw that match, we'll still move ahead to play the quarterfinals against Angola. I'm Nicholas Mudimba. Have yourself a great night.
We're watching KTN Prime. Just before we go, let's look at our big question tonight. We asked you if you think Kenya Power's monopoly should come to an end. 98% of you say yes, 2% of you say no. Nico says, I agree, monopoly is not the best, but what if it ends in the hands of cartels like the Kenyan Matatus? It's a very interesting perspective being brought in by Nico. Due to time, those are the only opinions we can sample at the moment. Thank you so much for watching KTN Prime, but I leave you now